They're handing out materials there now. I'm handing out materials to you now, so I just wanted to make sure this is here and also in the video, so that any priests that are watching this will be able to know about our program called Dying with Christ, Living with Hope. This is a program that was developed by CMDA Canada. It's 3 evening workshops that can be done at the parish level. It consists of 3 videos. The presenters in the videos are 3 Christian palliative care doctors, a palliative care nurse, a Catholic theologian, and an evangelical theologian. And what's really cool is that nobody really knows who the evangelical is and who the Catholic is. There's absolutely no daylight between their 2 positions, and they're both named David. So we developed this, and we have been delivering this across Canada. We now have about 1,000 people who've taken the course, and we're up to several hundred, I think 400 trainers at this point. So obviously number of our trainers is ahead of the number of participants because the trainers have not got out and done this presentation. We do online train the trainers. We know how busy you are. So all you have to do is identify perhaps 2 people in your parish who might be willing to do the online course. Just send them to the online course first. Don't talk to them about anything else that you'd like them to do. Just find out if they like it. What happens in almost all cases is they come to the course and they go, oh, this seems easy, I could deliver this. And then they can deliver it in your parish, and you can start, it helps you to start getting your parishioners aware of the Christian idea of death. This is what the focus is of this course. It's to restore the Christian idea of death. We're in danger of losing it, right? This helps parishioners restore the Christian idea of death. The guy, Brad McKinnon, who is the facilitator of the online sessions, has 20 years of ministry experience in Catholic parishes. So he understands everything about the situation, and he's there to help you. Okay, so I will put out some of Brad's cards if you have any questions about this, but it is designed to not be a headache for you. And I'll just reassure you by saying that one of the key focuses with the volunteers who lead it is that they are not to consider themselves subject matter experts. Their role is simply to facilitate. The first night, in the small group discussion, there is, we surface any questions people may have. The facilitator's role is just to list those questions, and then between the first and second session, ideally to invite a medical professional, maybe from your parish, who can come and answer any medical questions that come up. And then the third night is the best night for you to come, or some other person, a catechist or a pastoral associate that you may have, to come and answer any theological questions that may arise. It's also good for you to be there the third night because we talk about what participants can do to help surround the vulnerable, to provide support, to try to prevent MAID. And what has happened is that in some parishes where it's been held and the pastor has been there, the lay people have said, we'd like to restore our visitation ministry. And the pastor goes, great, any volunteers? And a lot of hands go up because they've been through the workshop. It's kind of similar to Alpha. And even I come on at the end and I ask anyone, if you want faith like the people that you've seen on this video, talk to your team and get them to help you to pray to the Lord to seek greater faith to be able to deal with some of these issues. I really wanted to highlight that for you, okay? Because I think it's an excellent program. And as I said, it's not a lot of work for you and tremendous benefits. It's a great feeling to stand up and preach knowing that you've got 20 or 30 people in the audience who've already been there. They understand the issues. And we have people all the time come into the session being pro-MAID and they leave anti-MAID once they understand. So I just want to encourage that. The second thing is that So far I've done 6 dioceses where I've gone in and done study days for the priests, where I've done a similar presentation to this. I'm very open to doing that if you want to recommend that or suggest that to your bishop. And the third thing is that I go around the country doing presentations for what you just heard this morning, what's wrong with MAID. So I'm willing to come into parishes and to dioceses and do those presentations. I did 3 days the Archdiocese of Edmonton about a year and a half ago, and boy, they really ran me ragged. I was just doing everything, but it was a great use of my time, and I really enjoyed it. And it's just nice to be able to get out and talk to people. Like we had close to 200 people at a public presentation, and I think that's a great way to mobilize people and get them interested. I'm also right now working on 7 7-minute videos on YouTube that will summarize the presentation I made this morning. So that's going to be a resource we'll get out to you as well. Okay? So let's move into the next section. Well, let me just say a word about conscience before we go any further. Nova Scotia is a hotbed of MAID activism. There's 4 principal people who have very established positions in Nova Scotia. I call them the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And they are, the registrar of the college is very much a MAID activist. And he has said that doctors must provide a written referral for their patients if their patients ask for MAID. This has come to a head. This policy was passed a year ago. We sent 4,000 letters to the Premier to get him to change the policy. He didn't touch it. The Premier is very concerned about doing anything that might be seen to be going against MAID. So he has been unwilling to act to stop the registrar. And just last week, one of our doctors got a letter from the head of the MAID team saying that, reminding the doctor it was his obligation to provide a referral, and that this was required by the college, kind of a thinly veiled threat. If you don't do it, we're going to report you to the college and you'll be disciplined. Okay, so things are currently at a head in Nova Scotia. I contacted my Archbishop earlier this week, and God bless him. He wrote me back an email that said, I will do whatever I can to help you. And I know Bishop Kirkpatrick will have the same attitude So we have a dogfight in our hands. Please pray for us. It's so ironic because this particular physician is a palliative care physician. He's an Anglican priest as well as a doctor, refuses to refer, doesn't believe in MAID. He was working in Antigonish. You know who I'm talking about, Philip Cooper. He was working in Antigonish. He's older than I am, so I think he's in his 70s. He made a commitment to work for 5 years in Yarmouth, which is in the southwestern part of the province, where they did not have any palliative care doctors. He made a commitment for 5 years. He sold his house in Antigonish, moved down to Yarmouth. He's been working now for a year and a half, and now he is at risk of losing his license because he refuses to provide MAID, to provide a referral for MAID. So do you see how diabolical it is? It's insane. This is a good example you can use for your parishioners who go, is it right for us to impose our ideas on others? Dr. Cooper, who is one of the province's best palliative care doctors, will not be able to care for patients because of this. So it's very serious. So thank you for listening to that. Oh, I think I'm headed in the wrong direction here. So pastoral responses. Let's move on to the pastoral response. Now, I just wanted to mention this. This is something I did my very first session with the priests in Edmonton. I just wanted to get a sense with the priests and the bishop there as to how MAID was affecting pastoral care. And so I asked them, what are the pastoral issues related to MAID that you're experiencing? I gave them 15 minutes to discuss. When they came back, it was it was jaw dropping. It was, there were 5.5 pages of issues. So the only reason I raise this with you is that you're all extremely busy as it is, and you have tremendous demands. MAID adds a whole other layer of demands on what you're doing, right? And it's really important to go through an exercise like this, especially with the bishop in the room. Because in my experience, the best dioceses are those where the bishop plays the role of almost like father to the priest or support to the priest. And it's really important that the priests have an opportunity to unpack what they're going through and to be able to talk to each other about it. In my opinion, it's very dangerous if that doesn't happen. If it's just something like, oh, this is just no big deal, this is just something extra you're going to have to handle. It is a big deal, and it takes a tremendous amount out of you emotionally. Because suddenly, the situation of the funeral now becomes potentially highly conflictual when all of a sudden the parishioner says, you know, someone dies and the family puts an ad in the paper, in memoriam, and thanks to the MAID team. And then they come and they ask you for a funeral. Suddenly something that's normally very pastoral and a lot of care and compassion now becomes highly conflictual. So this is a huge issue, right? And we have to tackle it, I think, head on. There were two types of concerns the priests raised. The first one was counseling. How do you respond to a parishioner who wants MAID? How do you respond to a family member of someone who has chosen MAID after the fact? These are key counseling issues. And then what are the doctrinal issues? Can you do a funeral, provide last rites for someone who opts for MAID? So these are really different issues. And you know, I just wanted to say something that, in my view, proper pastoral care requires attention to both of these areas. In my training, I did my master's in theology at the Atlantic School of Theology, and I did CPE, but I found there was a tremendous gulf between the pastoral courses, the pastoral teachers, and the systematic theology professors. They kind of just, in my experience, kind of tolerated each other. The people who were doing counseling, everything was about surfacing feelings. That was the panacea for everything. You know, surface feelings and the person will feel better and they'll be able to pass over this issue and deal with their grief or whatever they're dealing with. The doctrinal people were really focusing on systematic theology and what are the sources of our theology and those sorts of things. But in my experience, my limited pastoral experience as a deacon, I find that you need both of these things melded together. And some of us, if you go back to Myers-Briggs, some of us make decisions according to our thinking function, some of us make decisions according to our feeling function. So there are going to be people who are more comfortable on the doctrinal side, and there are going to be people who are more comfortable on the counseling side. And so one of the things we have to guard against is one side looking down on the other. So the doctrinal people can look at the counseling people and say, it's all just, you know, touchy-feely stuff. That's all that's going on there. It's not really important, right? And then the people on the counseling side can look at the people on the doctrinal side and say, they're not really empathetic people. They don't have any emotional intelligence. They don't. So we have to really guard against that and giving labels to those people. We need to recognize that our goal is to emulate Christ, who did both perfectly, right? Remember when he encounters the woman caught in adultery, does anyone condemn you? Neither do I condemn you. But go and sin no more. So he covered his doctrinal basis and he covered his compassion basis at the same time. He did both perfectly. So that's what we're called to do. But none of us is Jesus, last I checked. So we're all going to be on one side of that equation or the other. And so my recommendation is that we need to work collaboratively. Like in our parish, we have a clergy team, and we're all on different sides of that spectrum, and we preach collaboratively. We do team preaching. And so whenever I write a homily, Father reviews it. I get input from the other members of the clergy team. So I don't go out there without a proper balance. And likewise, when Father preaches, we all look at his preaching too, and we give him feedback. All I'm saying is we need to look at this as a team. And one of the nice things about the bringing parishes together is now we have more people, so we are able to consult with others about our approaches to things. And so I really recommend that. I think it's been a wonderful experience. Father, I know I speak for you too. It's been an amazingly life-giving experience. I think we're all better preachers because of it. Yeah. So how do we handle requests for MAID? I just want to tell you a very quick story. My father, in 2009, had squamous cell skin cancer on the side of his head. From the time he was diagnosed to the time he died was 2 years. So we had a long, long period in palliative care. And during that, my father was a very devout Baptist, but his faith began to waver during that period. This was before MAID was legalized, thank God. But I went up to Fredericton to visit him. I'm from Fredericton. And we were there with his palliative care doctor, and it was clear that my father was actually asking the palliative care doctor to kill him. He wasn't using those terms, but that was what he wanted. And you can imagine when I heard that, I was like, oh my goodness, what do I say? What do I do? I was immediately sent into a panic, and I just started praying, Lord, help me, Lord, help me. So a few hours later, I went into his room. We were there alone, and my CPE training kicked in. Ask a question. So I said, Dad, why is it that you want to die? And he said, well, I can't help anybody anymore. Now, that almost made me cry because my father was a real helper. He really cared for people. He helped my mother, he helped my brother, he helped my sister, he helped the family. So using that knowledge and working with his pastor, we developed a strategy of helping him to understand that by allowing us to care for him, he was actually helping us. So he had this horrible bandage on his head, and after a while the nurses couldn't clean the bandage well enough, so I would clean it. And I remember picking bone fragments out of his skull. But it was the most beautiful experience of my life because I felt like I was tending to the wounds of Christ. And he had donated a large sum of money to his church to help with an expansion. And he said to me one day, I sure wish I could see that. And so I called his pastor and I said, could we do that? He goes, why not? I'll bring my car down. We put him in a wheelchair, with a catheter bag on and the whole thing. We put him in the wheelchair, took him to the church, wheeled him into the church. There was a committee meeting there going on. They came out, it was like they had seen Lazarus. They were crying, they were hugging him. Thank you, Paul, for coming. We can't believe your commitment to the church. He brought so much joy. And that was I'm talking about just the high points. It was happening every day. People coming to his room to see him, coming out in tears. He was ministering to people in his state. So, it's interesting. We were able to help him with that, and he felt much more comfortable. I'm sure glad MAID wasn't legal because someone could have come in, a night nurse could have come in and said, there's a way for you to deal with the suffering of your wife. And that could have ended his life. But he ended up having the courage to be able to deal with the situation. And I never actually used the moral argument with him, which is interesting. But one of the key things is that we need to listen. And again, we go back, I just talked about these sources of suffering, isolation or loneliness, perceived burden on family, loss of dignity, loss of ability to engage in meaningful activities. These are all the reasons that people will give you for choosing MAID. And so if you hear those, then you're able to help the person deal with them. Now, this resource here is absolutely amazing. This is the Hope and Dignity program of the Archdiocese of Edmonton. Prior to me going out there, they were able to get permission to get a chart from a book. There's a palliative care specialist here in Winnipeg named Harvey Chochinov, and he has written a book called Dignity Therapy, Final Words for Final Days. Now, that's a great book, but none of you have time to read the book, but the chart in the book is golden. So somehow the people in Archdiocese of Edmonton got permission to put the chart on the website. So I really recommend that you get that chart, because if you have it, it can really help you develop strategies for people who are at end of life. So this is the chart here. The actual chart has factors that cause a lack of dignity in the patient. Then there's another section in the chart in the book that talks about counseling things. So they will have a question that you can ask to help with counseling. And then there's therapeutic interventions. And so I have the therapeutic interventions. I'm just going to give you a couple of examples. I'm not going to go through the whole chart. One is physical distress. And this is what you can do to help deal with physical distress: vigilance to symptom management, frequent assessment, application of comfort care. These are more what the doctor is going to be doing, but this can help you get an idea of what the strategy is for the patient. Medical uncertainty. Upon request, provide accurate, understandable information and strategies to deal with possible future crises. Well, if you have a patient who is in that situation where they have medical uncertainty, then you can help them with that. Continuity of self. Acknowledge and take interest in those aspects of the patient's life that he or she most values. See the patient worthy of honor, respect, and esteem. Generative legacy, life project. This is something that Chochinov does here in Winnipeg, where they get the patients to do audio tapes, letters, or journaling to help them to remember the positive things about their life. Finding spiritual comfort. Obviously, spirituality is really important, and resilience and fighting spirit. Which part of you is strongest right now? We don't often think about that, but people can find strength in these very difficult times, and by asking them questions like this, we can help them move in that direction. Social support. We need our churches to become stronger in providing social support and visitation for those who are sick. Burden to others. Invite people from the person's family to come in, or invite the patient to ask their family, am I a burden to you? It's often a fear that has no basis. And aftermath concerns. Encourage people to settle their affairs, etc. And what I have found in the people that I have counseled is that they're going through the 5 stages of dying. And my fear is that there is an ongoing process of acceptance, of grieving that people go through, going through all of these stages. Perhaps I'll just tell a quick story of a friend of mine who called me, and he said, I'm in palliative care now, and he said, I need to talk to you. So I said, sure. So we went out to his boat and we sat and talked. He said, I have lots of support, but he said, there's going to come a time when I need your help. And I said, okay, I'm there for you. So I didn't hear from him, but I did hear through the grapevine that he was declining. And so one Friday morning, I was working at home. He joined me on FaceTime. He was just sobbing. And I said, what's the matter? He says, I'm so upset. I said, what's wrong? He says, I'm such a burden to Janet. Janet is his wife. So I said, well, Phil, have you asked Janet whether you're a burden? And he said, yes. I said, what'd she say? He said, she said that she loves me and she wants to care for me with all the time that I have left. And she doesn't care that I'm going through this. This is really important to her. I said, why are you so upset? He goes, I don't know. And he starts to cry again. I said, well, tell me what happened. He said, this morning, Janet had helped him to go onto the toilet, and he had fallen off the toilet. And he had spent 30 minutes on the floor waiting for the ambulance to arrive to put him back on the toilet. And he said, I just feel like, I'm such a burden. I said, I have a suggestion for you, a theory about what you might be going through. He said, tell me. I said, you've been very brave all along. He had been blogging about his experience of dying. I said, you've been very brave all along, but your losses were gradual. Now your losses are much more significant. I said, it may be that you're grieving. And he said, yeah. And he started to think about that. And then he said that his family had come and we had to end our conversation. So about half an hour later, he texted me and he goes, what'd you say I was going through again? I said, grieving. He goes, okay, thanks. So the very next, I think within the week, he was in a hospice. They got me to get in to see him. I prayed with him. I thanked him for being such a good friend. And I thanked him for sharing, so much with me. And he couldn't speak, but he grabbed my hand and squeezed it. But I just thought to myself, what if Phil had talked to his doctor rather than talking to me? The doctor, hearing that he considered himself to be a burden, might very well have ended his life with MAID. And I think that's the difference. I think what's happening in MAID is that people are going through these stages of grief and they're saying, this is too hard, this work is too hard, it's too painful, it's too upsetting. I'm just going to short circuit it. I'm going to short circuit it right here or right here and not go through the process of healing. How are we doing for time, Father? Do you want me to keep going or stop here?
Continue.
Continue? Okay. Okay, so that's the counseling side. Now the other side is the doctrinal side. You'll notice what this slide Jesus say about MAID. I've gotten to the point where I don't talk about the church's teaching anymore with the lay faithful. Because you can tell them what the church teaches and they go, well, okay, that's what the church teaches, but that's not what I believe. What I try to impress upon them is that these teachings come right from the Lord. So we've talked about this. You shall not murder. Whatever you did for the least of these, you did it for me. And then when we look at the catechism, I just want to go into this with you. I don't know if I would quote the catechism with the lay people, but nevertheless, I want to make sure, absolutely sure, we all have the same doctrinal basis on this. An act or omission which is of itself or by intention causes death in order to eliminate suffering constitutes a murder. That's the term that's used, murder, gravely contrary to the dignity of the human person and to the respect due to the living God, his creator. You notice it is a sin of disrespect to God to be involved with euthanasia. Now, this is an important distinction that we have to remember when we talk to the lay people, because they really have a hard time with this. Euthanasia versus withdrawing care. Discontinuing medical procedures that are burdensome, dangerous, extraordinary, or disproportionate to the expected outcome can be legitimate. So discontinuing medical procedures can be legitimate, okay? That's not MAID. The use of painkillers to alleviate sufferings for the dying, even at the risk of shortening their days, can be morally in conformity with human dignity. So, it is possible for us to use painkillers to kill the pain in the patient, even though that means you might move the death ahead. That's acceptable, provided your intention is to deal with pain. Now these, in my experience, these are two things that are very hard for the lay people to grasp in relation to MAID. And it's very common, you will often hear them say, well, I know that they killed my uncle by giving him too much painkiller. because no one tells them that, but their uncle is doing great. They come in and give him painkiller, and uncle dies 2 hours later. So they put two and two together and think that they've killed uncle. It does happen, but not as often, I think, as people think. So I just want to highlight those things for you as important things to explain. But there is a risk here of mortal sin. Mortal sin requires full knowledge and complete consent. Full knowledge and complete consent. That's what is required for a mortal sin, and also grave matter. But look at this. No one is deemed to be ignorant of the principles of the moral law, which are written in the conscience of every man. There is something deep inside everyone that knows that it is wrong to end their lives. And my argument for that is, if you look at what's going on in the States, the percentage of people, the number of people who are choosing assisted suicide is way lower than the number of people who are choosing MAID. I would suggest to you that there is something hidden in every human heart that knows that this is wrong. Also, I think the other indicator is the fact that the MAID providers are so zealous about this, that they are pushing it so much, that they are requiring that everyone, every medical professional, perceive this as care. I think all of those things indicate to us that even though it's wrong, it's seen as wrong in our society to criticize MAID, in actual fact, everyone, I think, at some level realizes that it's wrong, even those doctors who've ended the lives of 500 or 600 patients. Now, this document is critically important to understanding the Church's perspective on this. This is Samaritatis Bonus, which was written by the Dicastery of the Doctrine of Faith. The Church affirms that the positive meaning of The Church affirms that the positive meaning of human life as a value is already perceptible by right reason, which the light of faith confirms and enhances in its inalienable dignity. Euthanasia is intrinsically evil in every situation or circumstance. So by saying it is intrinsically evil, it is grave matter and always and everywhere wrong to take someone's life. This means the circumstances of the situation are not to be taken into account in terms of whether or not it's wrong or not. Now, if you add to this intrinsically evil, if you add to that full knowledge and complete consent, then you have, on the surface, a mortal sin. But the problem in Canada is full knowledge and complete consent are required by law. Full knowledge and complete consent are required by law. This is what makes, you all know what the Church teaches on suicide, but this is what distinguishes MAID from suicide. Because in suicide, we're not sure about the intentions of the person who is killing themselves. And that's why we allow funerals and we pray for their soul, because we're not certain. And not only that, we think to ourselves, likely the person was under the influence of a serious mental illness, so they couldn't give consent. Those are all the reasons that we treat suicide that way. But this is radically different because the law requires, the doctors require, it's right on the form and it's in writing for the person to sign that you know what you're doing and you were giving consent to it. So, as a result, I say that people who participate in MAID are seriously putting their salvation at risk. We don't know that everyone who commits MAID is ending up alienating themselves from God. We don't know that because there are many MAID cases. I wouldn't say many, but there are a number of MAID cases where we question whether the person is even competent to make the decision. We question, given that the MAID providers are so aggressive, there may be people who are vulnerable who are swept into this. But don't make any mistake. There are definitely parishioners who feel so strongly about this that they are celebrating it in their families and the families are celebrating it. And like I said, we've heard situations where people are putting in the in memoriam, thanks to the MAID team, and then coming and asking for a Catholic funeral. So this is extremely problematic. Samaritanus Bonus clearly says that there can be no anointing of the sick, viaticum, or confession for those choosing euthanasia. In order to receive the sacrament, you would have to have the intention of canceling your MAID before receiving the sacrament. So this item here is really not up to our bishops. This is something that comes directly from Rome, was signed by Pope Francis. We have to avoid the appearance of complicity or approval causing scandal. So they're also saying that no one, no layperson, no chaplain, no priest can be present when MAID is administered because of the danger of scandal. Now I want to talk about what scandal is, because sometimes people will say scandal is like the ladies at tea time clutching their pearls, you know. That's not what scandal is about. Scandal is much more serious. Jesus says, and this is what Jesus says about scandal, if you cause one of these little ones who trust in me to fall into sin, it'd be better for you to have a large millstone tied around your neck and be drowned in the depths of the sea. And so the document, Samaritanus Bonus, says no healthcare worker, no family member, no pastoral worker may be present at the moment of euthanasia or assisted suicide. And the Catechism says scandal takes on a particular gravity because of the authority of those who cause it or the weakness of those who are scandalized. So I know of cases where there have been priests in Canada who've attended MAID. Okay, but they hopefully will become aware that by attending MAID, they are causing serious questions in the minds of the lay faithful, because you know when something like that happens and it's public, it just spreads like wildfire. Funerals. The Canon 1184 specifically says that church funeral rites are to be denied to the following unless they gave some sign of repentance before death. Other manifest sinners to whom a church funeral could not be granted without public scandal to the faithful. Now, in the area of funerals, you need to consult your diocesan policies. One of the best policies I find is this one developed for the Catholic bishops of Alberta and Northwest Territories. Pages 10 to 11 talk about this. And I think it's really good because they say that there is, generally speaking, funerals, especially funeral masses, are to be excluded, but you could have liturgy of the word, possibly in the funeral home, or you could have a special mass said for the repose of the soul of the person, and most everyone will provide some assistance at the burial site. In the policy in Alberta, there is some discretion in the bishop, because you can imagine there could be a circumstance where the whole family was opposed to the MAID. The person chose it, they're not sure if they intended to choose it, and you're having the funeral to console the family. Okay, that's a different scenario to where the person actually intended it. You know that they intended it, they were proud of it, and the family themselves were supportive. That's kind of a different sort of scenario, but the discretion of the bishop is used in Alberta and Northwest Territories to deal with that. But your policies are going to be different across Canada, and I don't know, are there any dioceses here that do not have a policy? Okay.
There's, Priest Council came up maybe earlier this year, and yeah, we're going to work on it and get back to it. And we haven't heard yet back. We brought you in to build some consensus, but we don't have it quite yet.
Do you want your money back?
You were great for us to come in and even to build consensus among varying ecclesiologies and ages within one diocese. I would think that you would have some more work to do with some guys here in our diocese.
Yeah. I'm also willing to work with the bishops to help them develop a policy too, if that's of any help to anybody. Yeah, because I'm facilitator, mediator, so I can help with some of that stuff. But just look at this here. The last canon in the Code of Canon Law, the salvation of souls is the supreme law. We need to get back to that. The salvation of souls is the supreme law. So, okay, so that's that. That was a little longer than I expected, but an important discussion. So actually happy to take any questions.